So hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out. I know I suckered a lot of my friends into coming out, so it looks like we have a big crowd that's interested, and I hope you are, because tonight is really going to be more of a discussion. And so this is the first time I've done this version of this particular material, and I'm really looking for your feedback about it. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you agree with? Where am I right? Where am I wrong? What are some of your ideas around it? And so that's really going to be the theme of tonight. The other theme of tonight is something that I've been asking myself more and more lately as I've been just kind of living life, I guess. And that framework of questions that I'm about to talk to you about is something that I'm going to be asking all of you to keep in mind as we go through and we think about what I'm going to be discussing here tonight with you. And that is, as I walk around the world, I say to myself, Liz, okay, as a citizen of the world, do you like the world that you're looking at? Do you like what you see? Do you like what's happening around you? And if I don't like what's happening around me, I'll say, okay, what is it I don't like about what's happening around me? And then I'll figure that out, and then I'll say, okay, is there anything I can do to change this? Or do I just have to suck it up and live with it? And so that's what I want you all to be thinking with me tonight as we go through the rest of this talk. It's, as a citizen of this world, do I like what I see? If I don't like what I see, what about it don't I like? And can I do anything to change it? Okay, do anything to update it? So one such interaction like this happened to me recently while I was here. Now this is a picture from the subway, the New York City subway. This is not my picture, so it wasn't my exact scene, but I'm sure you and along with me have seen this scene somewhere before, whether it's on the subway or the bus or some other form of public transit. And so I was here on the train, and it's a pretty normal day, and I'm riding the train, I'm looking at this scene, and I'm looking at the world around me, and I'm like, God, this is really bothering me. It's like, okay, I'm looking around at the world. I don't like what I see. What is it I don't like? And I realized that the fact that every single person, or the majority of people on my subway car, were on some form of technology was really, really getting to me. It had me conflicted. I was very agitated. I started to nickname these people the phone dwellers. I started to blame the phone dwellers for the decline of society, for the decline of the good old days, for the decline of conscious thought. So then I had this free association to these guys. So I'm thinking about this, zombies. You know, have you guys noticed like zombies are everywhere lately? TV, magazines, games, books. I mean, insert media here. There's zombies, and it's weird because like we kind of hate zombies, but we kind of love zombies. I mean, we hate zombies because they're really just unaware humans. I mean, they're not really alive, nor are they dead, and they're so unaware that they don't realize that eating my brains is a bad idea. So we hate the zombie. But then we kind of love the zombie. We love the zombie because we kind of empathize with the zombie. They sometimes look pretty human. And I think subconsciously we're always thinking to ourselves, man, if only the zombie would wake up. If only the zombie would be more aware, they wouldn't want to eat my brains anymore. Hey, they might even be good people. So I looked at this and I thought, why am I on the train ranting about the phone dwellers, thinking of these zombies? And then I realized that zombies are really just a reflection of human beings that are dead to the world. And given the world around me and the world around all of us, it's not really a surprise that zombies are being reflected back to us in all of our art and media and entertainment. So I'm sitting on the train, I'm thinking about the zombies, all this stuff is happening, I'm hating on the zombies, I'm hating on the phone dwellers, a lot of hate happening, and then I get this sudden flash of realization that brings me back to one of my client meetings a few weeks ago, where we're sitting around and we're talking about the goals of the business, and we're talking about how we have to increase user engagement, and we have to increase user acquisition and retention, and in order to do that, we need to keep people on the website as long as possible, and we need to make sure that they use our app as much as possible. And this memory hit me pretty hard. And I blinked myself back into realization, and I realized that in some way, I'm responsible for the zombie world that I'm looking at around me. Now, I know it's not all me, right? I know that this is not just digital design or user experience design or whatever, what have you, but I am in some small way responsible, right? That, and I should probably be high-fiving myself right now, because if you believe there's no such thing as great design, look around the world. People cannot put their phones down. We are good at what we do. We had these people hooked. So that's something else I was saying to try to cheer myself up, because this was kind of depressing. So I said, okay, is there anything that you can do about this world around you that you don't like? And if so, what is it? So in order to figure out what it was, I started to think back in the day to the beginning of my career. Now, when I first was a Java programmer, and this was many moons ago, I created things, but they weren't for the masses. So the programs that I developed were being utilized by insurance agents to sell insurance to people in person. Like a person would go to an insurance company and sit down across the table from another person and buy insurance. I'm explaining it because I'm not sure we've all encountered that before. So the technologies that I was building were used by a pretty small group of people. And then a few years later, I became an IA, and as this is happening, like technology is getting better, more people have access to computers, more people have access to the internet, and I'm designing things that are reaching that group of people. So my audience is getting bigger and bigger. And then a few years after that, it was, if we shut our telephones off tomorrow and we close all our offices, we should still be able to service our 6 million people online. Whoa, like that's a pretty big audience. Now that's becoming way more than some insurance agents with computers. And then they took all of that technology and put it in everybody's pocket. And so it was like overnight, seemingly, even though this happened over a longer span of time, it was like overnight we went from, developing small programs for insurance agents to like infinity and beyond, right? It was like we could be anywhere. Everywhere. Our stuff could be used everywhere. So some stats on this. When I first became an IA in 2005, 0.9 billion internet users worldwide. End of last year, 3.2 billion. So that more than tripled, right, in 10 years. 2005, 0.05 billion smartphone users worldwide. At the end of 2015, 1.8 billion smartphone users. So the numbers speak for themselves, right? What I was creating was no longer for this small group of people. It could literally reach almost a good portion, I won't say everybody because that's like not right, but a good portion of the world. Now, I want to take a break here and point out that what I'm saying is not really new, and I'm quite aware of this. Not the first person to talk about it. In fact, the first person that I heard talk about it was my friend and colleague Pete Naki, who gave a talk at Interaction 11 in Boulder. And he gave a lightning talk, but it was very impactful. It was titled Consume, Consume, Consume. And I think the video is still out on Vimeo. And I think it's very relevant today. But I remember his talk because I remember he gave a stat in the middle of this talk. Now, this is 2011, and he gives this stat. 27% of people use Facebook mobile in the bathroom. And everybody laughed. And this made everybody uncomfortable. I'm looking at Andy because you were there, right? It's like everybody laughed. Everybody was super like a little bit uncomfortable, like, haha, even though they're probably those people because we're early adopters, right? Well, now it's 5 years later, not one of you laughed because this is like completely normal now. So that 27% number is way higher. And I'm sure it's more than just Facebook mobile that we're using in the most intimate of places. So what's my point? My point is that we can safely say that the types of things that I have been creating and that many of us have created have the potential to reach billions of people in a millisecond. And as I said, we know this isn't new. I mean, maybe you guys know this. Maybe you are profoundly aware of the impact of this, but I wasn't. I heard Pete talk about it back in 2011. And I've had conversations with him about it since. And I was aware of it in those moments. Like, okay, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And there have been other people along the way at the same conference. Another friend of mine, Kaleem Khan, gave a talk, Design for Evil, that totally blew the crowd out of the water. Everybody disliked him for that because he was kind of changing and challenging morals and ethics. But it impacted me in that moment, in that time. But you know what? To be honest, I forgot. I forgot about those moments. I forgot about the impact I could have because I was too busy trying to create great user experiences. I was too busy trying to beat back my technology team and my business team and my marketing team to try to be the user advocate. I was too busy trying to create great designs and habit-forming products and things that people couldn't put down. I was just too busy to notice, but you know what? Everybody else is noticing. I mean, this is everywhere. People are writing about, is technology having this effect on us? How is it having an effect on us? Is it making us stupid? Is it making us numb? Is it totally taking away our ability to think? Is it disconnecting us from the rest of humanity instead of bringing us closer? We see that also in different statistics. So here, it's a little bit hard to see, but this study was done in 2012. So it's, again, pretty old by tech standards. But it's harder for people to forget about work when they're at home or on the weekends. It's harder for people to pay attention. And so we see this in articles, we see this in stats, but we don't need the articles, we don't need the stats, because when we go out into public, we see it everywhere we go. We see it here. People are holding technology. They're holding your ability to reach them is always in their hand. We see it, all across New York, especially in cities, but it's not just cities anymore. We also hear it in different media. This is a quote from a podcast, A Note to Self, WNYC production. Does anybody listen to this podcast, Note to Self? It's awesome. They're pretty short, like snippets, like 20 to 25 minutes, and it's all investigating the impacts of technology. Anyway, this particular quote was from a woman named Sally, who's an English woman who's a resident of New York. And she feared that New Yorkers were losing their edge. And she said, we're turning into zombies walking around because we're so glued to our screens. Screens. I do that. I make those. I'm responsible. And if you don't believe me when I say I'm responsible, I have proof that I am a zombie creator. I have created content aimed at teaching people like you how to keep people engaged. I have created designs that are aimed at keeping people in the app and keeping people clicking around. I have created behavioral prototypes of people to try to figure out what their goals are, what their tasks are, what their desires are, so I can hijack them. I've created things that people can't stop swiping and clicking and reading. I've aimed to do this. This is my unofficial definition, by the way. I've aimed to create habit-forming designs that are aimed at triggering the user to complete an action or task in an unconscious or unaware state. And I do all of this stuff because I'm trying to hijack the user's brain into doing what I want them to do in order to make my business successful. Has anybody else read this article? I was looking at you guys, it's a pretty great article. Actually, Jackson, you sent it to me, and you sent it to me. So in it, Tristan Harris talks about how he was a magician when he was a kid. Like he played around with magic tricks and stuff, and how he's noticing in technology teams using these same sort of magic tricks, same sort of tricks that magicians use in order to kind of control the environment that they're showcasing their tricks in. So you think you're seeing magic, but really they've controlled every aspect of your environment to hijack your brain into thinking that you have free thought, but you really don't. I do this. I do this for a living. Some of the ways that I do this and some of the things that I'm guilty of are, hey, you know what? If you control the menu, you control the choices. Hey, think about it. If people come to your website and you're only giving them so many choices, like magicians do, then they can only go certain paths. And you know what? This is a nice looking menu. Here, I can only go on one of these 3 paths. Oh, wait, who created the wireframe for that? I did. Guilty as charged. There are other things that I've taken advantage of. Hijacks like fear of missing something important, or fear of, or the need for social approval, or the need for social reciprocity. I've totally tried to take advantage of this in different designs I've done. Look at all these fake share and tweet buttons all around, posting comments. I totally tried to hijack people's ability and need to be social. Guilty as charged. I've also done things like bottomless bowls or infinite feeds, autoplay, playing the next thing, making sure there's a piece of content there for you to read next, keep them on the site as long as possible. And if they're not on the site, let's make sure to send them a notification to come back and check the team's score. I have totally created things that do this. I'm 100% guilty of the zombification of the world around me. But perhaps my most heinous crime is following this hijack. I am way guilty of this one. The concept here is that we bundle our reasons, the business's reasons, because in the end, the user doesn't sign the check that goes in my bank account. So in the end, I'm taking the business reasons, and in order to justify them, I'm telling myself that they're also the user's reasons and the user's needs as well. In fact, I have believed in this for a long, long time. This is just one iteration of a Venn diagram where I'm at the center bringing everything together. This is done by my good friend Eric Flowers. And I think he does a good job at describing it. But the concept here is that we think, or I have thought, that by bringing together business needs and user needs, I was doing good in the world. I thought that because I have user in my title, I'm the user advocate and I'm doing what's best for my users. I have thought that, but then I thought, in my reverie on the train, who's the one that put the user in my title? I did. Who's the one that self-labeled themselves a user advocate? I did. And the thing about all of this is, I may do what's best for the user software-wise. I'm not always sure I do what's best for the user people-wise or human-wise. Because in the end, like I said, the user doesn't always write my check. I'm going to be biased. And then I started thinking more and more about all of this, and I realized that the majority of my career comes down to me taking up people's time. My job is to take up people's time, a lot of the times. I take up time they could be spending with their families. I take up time they could be spending with doing their own creative stuff. I take up time they could be spending helping other people to be better people. I take up time that they could be spending just doing their own passions or understanding themselves better. And it's funny because, I have a lot of conversations with my clients and my teams about minimizing the user's time to task. Make sure it's easy to get through, minimize the number of clicks, but in reality, I'm just sucking them more into the system. I'm just taking up more of their time. So at this point, you may be wondering, okay, hold up. Isn't the user responsible in any of this? Like, they're people. They have the opportunity to make the decision for themselves whether or not they pick up the phone or they pick up the tablet. Yeah, I think I remember somebody else saying that. Who was it? Philip Morris? Pfizer? I don't know. The guy in the corner? I believe we've gotten people so hooked and sucked into technology with the things that we've created that it's probably a good chance that they can't unsuck themselves, that we probably need to help. In fact, Jonathan sent me this article that it's really hard to break a habit. And for me, a habit is a habit. I don't care if that habit's a good habit or a bad habit. Either way, you're unconscious and you're unaware of what you're doing. So, man, this is really depressing, right? I'm thinking all these things to myself, and I'm like, man, Liz, you're really being hard on yourself. Not unusual, if you know me. I'm like, man, what am I going to do about this? Is there anything I can do about this? Surely digital product design or user experience design is not the downfall of all of society. But rest assured, there is hope. Now, if we are, or if I am at least, in part responsible for the zombification that's happening around me, there has to be something I can do to change it. And I think that there are a lot of, or at least more people and more groups doing things to change everything that's happening around us, this sucking into our phones. One such example is a friend of mine, or a friend of my business partners, created this app called Look Up, which as you're walking through New York, as you're approaching an intersection, it does some sort of animation and buzzing, which causes you to look up. So actually taking you out of the phone, I know, heresy, but actually taking your attention away from your phone so that you see the world around you. Another thing that happened, and this has been happening for a couple years now, in Seoul, South Korea, is this artist event competition called Space Out. And so this year's turnout had close to like 70 people, and they have a whole bunch of rules that they have to follow. They can't be on their phone, they can't talk to others, they can't check their watches, they can't doze off, and there are judges there to make sure that nobody does those things, and if they do, they get disqualified from the competition. And the reason that they did this, and it's a little bit hard to read, but basically the competition was intended to encourage mobile, addicted, stressed out South Koreans to slow down. And the artist was talking about how they were suffering from burnout syndrome at the time. They felt extremely anxious sitting around doing nothing, so they had to be productive. And so in order to combat that, they came up with this concept. But art and those sort of bigger ideas aren't the only things that are happening. I mean, we have in our own industry, Eric Meyer and Sarah W.B., I can never ever pronounce her last name, but there it is, wrote this book called Design for Life, for Real Life. And I was talking with Sarah this weekend about this book, and the whole concept for it was really that as designers, we're very narrow-minded on use cases like from technology, as opposed to thinking about people as real humans. And so I encourage everyone to go out and read it, because I think, especially if you're interested in this topic and what you can do to stop creating zombies. Another example is Amber Case wrote Calm Technology, which is another practical guide that talks about calm technology and this concept of it, which is basically only alerting the user and taking their attention away when you need to. And the rest of the time, the technology is happening in the background, allowing the user or the person to be a person and not just always sucked in. Another app or service that I heard about was Perka, and unfortunately the co-founder couldn't be here today, but he said one of his coworkers may be here. Awesome, yeah. So Perka is an app that's designed to help you get rewards with some of your local businesses. But make sure to keep me honest. But the thing that Jay was talking about was that what he's always, especially when they're in product discussions, thinking about is not so much being in the app to get the rewards, but the app knows where you are. And you'll go up to the person, whatever you're ordering, and you'll say, "Hi, I'm Liz." And they'll see Liz is here. And then it logs that you're there in the background. And they're always thinking about how do we get people to look up from their screens, not be in the actual screen in order to make things happen. And there are other things. So there are things that I'm doing to try to stop creating zombies. One of the most important ones is questioning my own motivations. As I've talked about, like I have been in this habit of assuming that whatever I do for the user is really what's best for the user, or that creating things that help them get things done is really good for the user, or marrying business goals with user goals is really what's best for the user. And I've stopped myself from always assuming that and really questioning it each time I do design anything. I even question it when I think about the clients that I'm going to work with. And so I've been trying really hard to take on clients that are thinking outside of our normal realm of, thank you, Pete, consume, consume, consume. I also try never to create a habit forming anything. That's just something that I'm like, it was a sword that I'm falling on recently. But there are other things that you can do besides this very extreme approach. You know, I get a lot like, you're a consultant, you can choose your own work, and that's true. But there are other things that any of us can do in our own practices, whether we're consultants or in-house or agency or whatever. And they can be on a range. You can just start to become more aware of your own design decisions and motivations. Am I doing this really for a human being, or am I doing this to get more likes and more clicks? And is that really what's right for somebody? You could simply fight one battle at a time. Maybe you can't change a whole design or a whole project, but maybe there's some copy that you can influence, or maybe there's a little a menu or a function or some interface element that you can influence. You could start small, right? You could stop putting your time and attention into things that are helping you to become a zombie creator. And you could take your time and attention and put it into things that are helping you to not be a zombie creator. So we had the meetup last month, and one of the things that Logan talked about during that was creating designs that help people be more conscious of the things they're doing. You could think about ways to do that. I mean, I'm sure there are tons of ways that you could start to move the needle from the undead to the kind of alive again. And I hope to talk about them in a few minutes. But either way, the world we've created and the world that we've continued to create is out there for billions of people to potentially interact with. And I encourage you to have a look around, to take that look around and say to yourself, do I like what I see? And if you don't, ask yourself what you don't like. And then ask yourself, is there anything I can do to change it? Because I'm willing to bet that there is. Thanks. I didn't say, but I meant to say that this was going to be much more of a discussion. I know I was talking a little bit about that, but I wanted to only talk for a little bit of the upfront time, or like half of the time up front, and then kind of facilitate a discussion with everybody else about what I said and whether I'm crazy or not. And so I guess I'm wondering first if there's any sort of questions or comments, or yes?
Your first image with the people with the phones. Have you seen that meme online where people are like saying like, oh, technology today is ruining like our ability to like interact with each other? And then they show a photo from like 1930 or something, and it's like all these people on the train reading newspapers.
Yeah.
But like every one is a newspaper. So I always wonder, like, is it the screens that are doing it, or is it like just like our social anxiety, like not wanting to talk to other people that we don't know? It's like we need to find something to like avoid eye contact or something.
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this before I go?
That's actually one of the things that I thought of first when I saw the people during their review. But I think that the image of everyone on their front of the dinner table is certainly, I think, a behavior that is what I think traditionally you would think of just genuine sort of social interaction. But I think that in the case of during a community, it's a little more nuanced, because I think there's a principle in sociology, I don't remember the name, but if you're surrounded with, if you were in a densely populated area, right, in an urban city, in New York, you're less likely to engage in social interaction with people, because if I were to say hello to everyone I saw, I would work 3 hours a day.
Right.
I think it's a Western culture kind of thing. It's like we're so used to doing in our society. People feel like they have to be busy. My mom is ever watching this, I apologize with her head. She would often say, "Mom, how you doing?" She's like, "I'm good, I'm busy." So there's something to that, like when you're on the subway or on the bus, this idea that it's hard to sit still.
Yeah.
And the phone just becomes this thing that no matter where you go, it's right there to allow your mind to have something to do other than the nothing. Those folks in South Korea.
And it's funny because this is like, I have not thought about this at all. This is off the cuff. Everything I'm saying now is off the cuff, by the way. So watch out. But it's like, I wonder if then part of my own curiosity in putting this like talk together is like, is it my job to change that even? As a designer of digital things, if I can affect 1 billion people, like I could safely say that things I've created have been seen by millions of people. I could safely say that, just because of the size of some of the companies I've worked with, right? Not because I'm great or anything, just that. So is it then my job, or do I want to make it my job, to start to change the society around me? I don't know. Can I? I don't know. You know, these are just things I'm thinking about.
And then the question is, does the society want to be changed? We want to change the society. It sounds like a good idea because we want to interact, but do people want not to be on?
Yeah. Oh God. I'm like, I was like, no, I have a whole. You did, and like, I was gonna go to the Amy Winehouse thing, and I was like, no, you're on camera. But yeah, and it's awful. It's not awful, but I often think of addicts. I really do, and I'm not saying addiction is a whole different topic. It's a very sensitive topic, but I think of it.
No, it's totally similar.
Yeah, you know, it's like, do they want to change? And if they really don't, many times they can't. At least I hear from that. I don't have extensive experience. I'm not a scientist. Okay.
So Liz and I are talking about your talk about a week ago, and I have this on my mind. And I go back to my desk, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I realize that I check my phone for my email like 3 times within 15 minutes, aware that I'm doing it, and allowing myself to do it.
Yeah.
Because I can't stop.
Yeah, and so actually I meant to bring up, don't check.
Just because I think everybody in this room here have an option to change if they choose to. I think the impact is not us, it's our next generations who actually born with the device in front of their face that before these generations never existed. They don't have a choice. It was in front of their face before they say the first word.
Right.
What that impact would be is going to be the thing that I think we should
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
I mean, we also have a choice. We were born for when this
Mm-hmm.
Just-
Yeah, it's a great
Look.
point.
No, that's very true. I have a daughter, and she's 2.5, and I've watched her use, without any explanation, nothing, she just picked it up, swiping, and correctly, calling my mother, correctly swiping on the apps that she could find. It's all intuitive. It's all we created. It's very intuitive, very logical. And if a 2.5-year-old can do it without any sort of, onboarding experience or whatever, then we did our job, right?
That's the
We
question.
did a good job.
Is this the job we want to do?
Is this the?
Oh, don't forget.
So, I mean, when we start talking like that, we start talking like sounding a little bit like our grandparents and great-grandparents.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great-great-great-grandparents. So like books are bad because so we can't, you're not allowed to read, only we can read everything to you, and then, don't listen to the radio, and like TV's gonna ruin your eyesight, and then like you can't have a computer in your room because you'll learn to be a developer and then become very wealthy later, and like all that stuff, right? We start talking about,
Were they wrong?
What?
Were they wrong?
I think there were, yeah.
Okay.
Because, and even in the case of like the kids growing up with a screen, if we think it's going to be a screen in 20 years, like we're wrong, right? It's not going to be a screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be something else because we're going to create something else, and it's probably might be worse. It's going to be better
And I think
in a lot of ways too.
that's exactly what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
We are sitting here now, the people who created this, we're creating the next thing, totally unaware that we're responsible for creating the people on the dinner table.
But there's a basic evolutionary thing in play that I don't think is quite captured in what you're saying.
Sure.
Where if you look at a kid using a device like an iPad, it kind of undermines their ability to concentrate on things. And there's always an option that is more interesting than the present option. I'm a little bored with this. I'm gonna go switch to this. I'm a little bored with this. I'm gonna go switch to this. I'm a little bored with this. I'm gonna go switch to this. I think, and it's something I'm kind of struggling with in rearing my own kids, is how this device and similar devices that are part of our own cultural evolution are changing the way that our brains work. In the same way that
But that was TV as well, right?
well, I can tell you a phone number right now, and you would 100% not fucking remember.
Yeah.
Whereas if I told it to you 15 years ago, you might have. If I told you 20 years ago, you totally wouldn't have.
It's also 3 less digits.
Yeah.
True.
Even so. And, we all know, we remember now we know how to access information, not remember it.
Yeah.
But I think that there's like a tectonic shift in how our brains are working, and it's worth it.
If only somebody brought that topic up to a larger community.
To actually build on that, neurologists are actually measuring the brain size of humans. And our brain is actually shrinking tremendously. It's actually much smaller than millions of years ago when the Homo sapiens actually walked the earth.
Oh, wow.
We're actually gradually shrinking our brain. And there's actually a really interesting study that I'm not allowed to talk about, but a friend of mine is doing. It's really interesting. It's a very secretive study. I can just tell you about the gist of it, is that they're finding that kids nowadays using technology is missing certain part of their development cognitively.
Love it.
So it's actually causing a lot of issues. It's actually causing psychological issues down the road. And they're already seeing the patterns now emerging. And technology hasn't been around that long. And cell phones, smartphones, and tablets have only been around for 10 years. But they can see the trend, they can see the measurements, they can see in the psychological field where these kids are coming in, and when they measure their brains and see the areas where they're not developing, they can make a correlation to the technology they're using.
And I also,
Not to be crazy, sorry, I'm stopping.
welcome.
Maybe this is the beginning of transhumanism.
Yes.
That's like, okay, we're changing into something different. And maybe that's fine.
It's a little symbiotic.
Maybe it's not.
And maybe it is. Along with that, though, I want to get back to what Josh was saying, because that's why I had this discussion with my grandmother. And like many of you here are my friends, so I have this like super huge family somewhere in the country of New York. If you don't know, now you know. And so I'm talking to my grandma, who like we don't even barely have cell phone service where I live today, right? And it's in New York State. It's not far from here. And she's like 95 at this point, and she's telling me how terrible the internet is. And I was like, well, that's a terrible thing to say because that's how I make my living. But I brought up to her, what about the radio? You could say the same thing about the radio. Say the same thing about television. But so why is it the internet's fault? But I guess, and I didn't know this until we started talking about it. So this is the point of this meetup has happened. It's like, but I feel like we do this. Like we are coming here after work to talk about how to be better at our jobs. Should we then talk about how to not make that happen with technology or how to shift it? That's my question. It's like we have the power, really. I mean, I know we're not all powerful, but we have these options. We have these right, like Jeff was saying, we can actually choose. And we are like the demigods because we're the ones who put the screens together. So then what is our responsibility for the future that we create? I don't know.
Okay, so I agree with like 99% of your entire talk. But the thing I disagree with is the conclusion to not make habit-forming products and only drive to create consciousness of behavior.
Okay.
Because I don't think that works for a majority of people. I think you can strive to create consciousness and behaviors, but the only way you're going to actually improve people's lives is by also having the habit-forming component. And you see that in cases like
improving their lives, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so like, let's just take the addiction example, right? The only way you get a person to become a non-addict is to create habits that get them out of addiction, right? Same thing with like social, like addiction to being on your phone all the time, right? There's certain things like, I forget which apps they are, but they like help you time out, and that's a habit that you form. It's not creating conscious. Well, it's doing both, I guess. So.
So methadone addiction is better, obviously, than heroin addiction.
Hey, Peter, I'm glad you brought this guy. He took all our material. I don't know about
Well, I think part of the point is that it's like we have the power.
Right.
Is how do you use the
Well,
power?
also like, can you ever just decide like what do I want to promote? Like which behaviors do I want to promote, and can I create habits around good behaviors?
I think what I'm trying to say, which I'm not very good at because I tend to be super opinionated, but I'm trying to get better at that. But it's like, what I'm trying to say is like, I think no matter what, we should all be thinking about it. Whether you choose to decide or not, like to change your behaviors or whatever. For me personally, and I use this example and it's like getting worse every time I use it, it's like the whole good habit example. Was it you that we were talking about? Like it makes you more efficient and all those things. And I'm like, what's the point of being efficient if you don't even know what's happening? You know, it's like if you quit smoking and in your bag, in place of your cigarettes, you put a pack of gum instead, but you're still taking a slice of gum when you don't know. You've just replaced that addiction. Yeah, maybe it's better for your body, but is it really making your life better? I don't know. You know, that's like, for me, I don't think so, but that's just Liz. But I think you would say the opposite. You would say, yeah, that is making your life better.
Well,
maybe not that specific example.
Yeah, but you have to actually decide like, what do I think is good, what do I think is bad, and the ultimate goal is to create consciousness, but you can't do that in every instance. And you can also improve consciousness by creating habits. So like, can you do the two together?
I would say no, but because like, to me, the definition of a habit is you're not conscious. But are there other thoughts along this line? Because, oh, sorry, I never got back to you.
That's fine. One thing I was thinking about before was like, it kind of goes with some of the stuff we were talking about, but like Apple Watch, just like the smartwatches. So it's like a way to get all the content you need in like, just like a bite-sized format. So it's like not something that, like it's not designed to keep you in the thing. It's just designed to like give you the thing you need and then you just go back to whatever you're doing. Yeah. So maybe that's the thing with like, where they're talking about putting like a Google Glass kind of stuff in contacts and like those kind of push notifications or something. Like maybe that's, I don't know, like what do you think about like if that's a way to sort of like get us out of the screens by giving us a different format of the screens? It's kind of like the digital methadone or something.
Yeah, right. And you know, it's like, and obviously I'm not final on any of this, so, but it's like, part of me is like, who says that's content you need? Like, why do we need this content all of a sudden? We've lived for like millions of years without it. Why can't it just be enjoyable? And the reason why I'm thinking about this is because I see my own relationships and friendships changing. Like I see like people becoming way more anxious than they ever were, and I'm like, who are you? I don't know you. So that's why I started wondering about it, you know? But maybe to everybody's point, I think it is a way to get you out of the screen, but maybe like to Josh and Andy, it may not be screens in a few years. So we're still stuck. So it's kind of interesting to think about for me.
I was just going to say that I think Google Glass is probably the worst example of screens, because it's a screen that's right in front of your eye. It's still a screen. What's the difference? And have you ever seen people walking on the street going like this, they're typing, they're texting, or whatever they're doing, changing their music? I do it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, but now I have a screen that's right next to my eye. You know, when someone calls me, or I can call somebody, you know, with my eye or something.
You like lose the focus. It's like right here, you just.
But that's crazy. That's me getting into your brain.
So there's this book that I read. Then it's in it's in the future. It's fiction, but I find it funny that you guys are talking about the glasses, because in the book they're talking about how the Google glasses, tech glasses are so prevalent, everybody has it, and then when you're talking to somebody, they may look like they're talking to you and paying attention to you, but you never really know. And they may have a glaze over look. Yeah. It's because they're not actually paying attention to you. Right. They're looking at something in their screen.
And to me, I feel like that's happening right now.
Well, I was in the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, and there was a guy with Google Glass, and I thought he was looking at the blossoms. And I was sworn he was looking at the blossoms. We were standing side by side. And this guy is putting his Google Glass, and he's either talking to somebody or taking a video or a picture. He's not actually looking at the blossoms. He's videotaping them. Or, I don't know.
To maybe look at them in the future when he's not there. Yeah.
But why do you say stuff though? Because what if he was broadcasting that to his girlfriend across the other country?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, there could be.
But what do you parody this? Why is it your business?
It's not at all. I mean, I don't really care what he does. But if we're talking about making products that take you out of screens and whatever, that's not real life. That's not being in the moment and enjoying life. That's broadcasting into a girlfriend, which is a good thing. It could be great, It could be broadcasting into his child in a different country. I mean, that could be a wonderful thing. It's just him not being in that moment looking at blossoms.
I just think when you're having this discussion, there is this in the moment concept, but that moment is huge with the technology that we have, and you just have to balance it with the other side. I
think that's exactly where I want to get to. Yeah. I think you're right, but I think that example is brought up so much less. I bring it up less. I'm not thinking about wow, somebody could use this. I'm thinking about, man, there's going to be some mean stats. I'm going to get rehired. I'm going to have this client for a while. That's what I'm thinking about. But I think, do we need to start thinking about it that way? And instead of, I'm not saying there should be no technology ever. I want to eat. But how do we, knowing that we're the ones who design this stuff, or at least help to design it, what do we do? How responsible are we? Can we, I keep coming back to Josh's point about the radio and things, because it's can we do something about it now? Can we? The internet's free now, for lack of a better, it's not all one broadcast. It's there's so much potential. What can we do about it with the power we have in our day-to-day jobs?
So I'm a evil product manager guy, so a business guy and that the cool triangle stuff, and I'm so the problem is, right, everyone wants to, what I want is, I want your attention so I can make money from your attention, right? That's what I want, right? So I'm go design me something that gets people's attention and keeps it for as long as possible, as often as possible. I don't care what kind of day it is, how long it is, whatever, because I know that if I go sell some ads or do some, sell some products to somebody, that's how we're gonna make money, and that's totally cool. So what I need to do is figure out, how to monetize, right, being okay with people not paying attention to me or my product at that moment. And that's the problem I think we need to solve. Because you can't change anything. If a designer comes into the room and says, I'm going to make this less desirable because I believe people shouldn't be paying attention to this.
What did you do? What were you before you became a product person?
Well, I was a designer. Yeah. But that's what I was saying. I'm playing devil's advocate. Realistically.
No, but you're right.
Yeah.
That's the discussion to have.
But don't you have to make products that people are interested in, rather than using basic psychology against users in order to determine what you want.
Totally.
Why do
The
you
thing is,
have
the
to make
content's
products that
good.
people are interested in?
Well, like if we're talking about
Because
content business,
it's better than preying on their human friends.
but there's lots of great products that you'll never, and no one will ever find. I mean, so we are finding about. I mean, there's a real about for like how do you even find a great product, right? That's a
Discovery
thing.
is a huge problem.
Yeah,
But separate.
and then so then I look at it and go like, you're totally right. But let's talk about the really basic piece of product, like really good content, right? Really good content is really good content. Like I love reading great stuff, watching great video, and everyone does because it's good content. I love good books, great content, music, whatever, right? So I have a great product, like good music. I like still need to. I still want you. You still want to find it. I still want to get it to you and deliver it to you somehow and get your attention on it, and you want to consume it because it's good content. Do I stop creating good content? Do I like make it less good because I maybe think you shouldn't read stuff as often, or?
I think you're touching on a thing that I've been thinking, which is like, perhaps one of the reasons I brought this topic up is because I myself was becoming a design zombie. Like I assumed all of these things were true, and I went through my same process instead of thinking like, okay, I have impact. 3.2 billion people have access to the things that I create. What am I going to do with that? But I just got into this mode of like, here's how I was told to do it right, and here's how to do it really well, and I'm just going to be the best designer I can be. So yeah, it's like, do we stop creating great content? How much of the content out there is really great content?
This video is great content that I'm making right now.
This video is amazing. The protagonist is really, really cool. But yeah, and I think we have lost our own creativity and our own ability to be innovative in our own creations because we're trying to get in frameworks, we're trying to do things like everybody else, we're trying to meet goals for our businesses, which I'm enemy number one in that as well.
So a very quick remark. It's more than just digital products, right? If you look at healthcare in general, the entire healthcare is creating behavior changing design to make their patient to do what they think the patient should do. So the world, every single vertical in this world are creating good design. This is what we call good design to change behavior. And some of those are important lessons because we are hopefully helping people live a better life through good design, sometimes through digital product and sometimes through healthcare and so on and so forth. So I'm just saying that it's not all bad.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not all bad. But it's like, I liken it to the TV thing. Like, we would always, in my group of designers early on, would talk about like the marketing people and how they were always trying to like get into the segment analysis. I do the same damn shit now. I'm doing the same thing by trying to understand who people are, what do they do, what triggers them, A/B test it, go through user testing, make sure it's efficient. Like I'm doing the same thing, So it's like, am I okay with that? Sometimes. Maybe I'm creating something good then, maybe sometimes I'm not.
I think the problem went from bad to worse when these things came. It's a hardware problem. It's the idea like when I'm thinking about what can we do to solve the problem, I'm thinking about how can we create moments in our life that are carved out where we're not focused on something. It's like this sort of meditative walk, if you will, walking and looking at blossoms, whatever it's going to be, and having these moments carved out in our life, whether on the weekend or our walk to work, where we're just intentionally trying to not be doing anything I think is healthy. And this makes the problem really hard. So the idea of having a newspaper that you can read, okay, you have the internet just at a desktop. It's just another way to read stuff or interact. This made the problem worse.
Mm-hmm.
And the technology is, unfortunately, just making it harder. Prior to this, it was bad. Now it's just good.
But this also made so many things amazing.
That's
and
absolutely true.
What I like about Liz's talk especially is that if you think about design and the kind of basic definition as the rendering of intent, you're called to just be critical and have critical thinking, introduce and be aware of your biases. I think it's the most important thing. Whether it's habits, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's whatever. Who knows what the people on the train were doing? I can't remember who just pointed that out, but maybe they were writing to their sick mother, or maybe they were reading a book, or maybe they were writing a book. People on the train in Japan write novels on their phones.
Right.
So there's a lot of assumptions that we kind of constantly have, and being aware of our own assumptions and our own intent, and what that kind of translates to in the designs that we're creating, I think is the most important thing.
I think there's a addictive quality to these phones because they're so empowered. There's an amazing amount of things you can do, and also the information that it feeds you. So if you look at a phone like this now, anybody is more powerful and more knowledgeable and smarter than any president even about 20, 30, 40 years ago with his phone, because you can look up any information in real time, anytime. Mass adoption has shifted tremendously. In the beginning, electricity took 46 years for Americans, for a quarter of the population to adapt. And then telephone took 36 years. These smartphones only took about 6 years to be adopted.
Yeah.
And where it's going is that you have to have this competitive edge. So if somebody has this phone, you don't have it, you're at disadvantage. So I'd like to pose a question, because you raised an interesting thing that in this fictional book, they talk about everyone having classes. Where Larry Page is going in the future, in the very near future, he's going to shrink this down to a microchip that's going to fuse into your brain. And so being installed inside your brain. So anything you think about will be answered by Google instantaneously. So you'll be smarter than anybody else.
Yeah.
If your friend got one, will you want one too? Will you install it? Just show of hands. Because you're going to have a competitive advantage that no one else can. Because if you're at work, somebody asks, who knows the equation to this thing, you can instantly raise your hand and just slide right out because it'll transmit directly into your mind.
The computer was
smarter than everybody else or nobody else?
But the computer was designed off of something, right? It's not like somebody just thought of a computer out of nowhere. I mean, its ultimate concept model is the human brain. We just started with information retrieval, input and output. So it's not a surprise that it's going towards creating the human brain, right? The question is, and I think the ultimate thing, and I think we're almost out of time, or do we have time? I don't know. I didn't look at the time. 5 minutes from now? I think one of the big things is that we, or several of us in this room, as our careers get more progressive, are going to become the people who have the budgets to design the next things. And if we're not aware when that happens, what are we designing? More of that problem. Because there's not much we could do. Like you were saying, if a designer comes to me and wants to do this, it's like, no, I have a thing I'm trying to do. But if you're that person that's like, no, why?
That begs the question, how does design get into research labs? Because the technology that we're designing today was developed 30 years ago. So we're totally behind the curve on all of this. I think to have a really big impact, you need to be there versus what gets into the consumer market.
Do you know people there?
I have no idea how designers think.
Oh, I'm interested. Do you know people there in general? Because I go talk to them. I'm just kidding.
I know they're there. I don't know them.
Like you could tell me I have this friend, she has this talk, maybe like we could talk about it. Let's see that. One last thing.
It might be useful to scope the discussion in terms of what, I don't know how many people here are just designers, product designers, whatever, but to scope the discussion in terms of what is doable within our sphere of influence. When you get a notification from Facebook, they're like, oh my God, your friend took a photo, and you don't know what the photo is, you're gonna click on it. You're gonna do it because you want to see the photo because you're freaked out.
And I'd say the next time you're in a client meeting and they're like, we have to get people back into our app, and you're like, we should create a notification that doesn't tell them what the photo is, that's in your sphere of influence.
And
we're not going to stop our Facebook.
It's a question of product ethics.
Definitely.
And I think that's the scope of influence that we can have is like dissuading people from making those bad choices.
It is done.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you for having me.